to introduce your mentor. So Kelly had a wonderful opportunity to work with Malama Na Honu, and her mentor in this project is Debbie Hara. And Debbie is a longtime sea turtle advocate and educator. She started as a volunteer with Malama Na Honu back in 2013, spending most of her days interacting with locals and visitors on sea turtle protection and education. In 2015, she became the volunteer education coordinator and is currently responsible for training and mentoring over 200 volunteers. That's quite a lot of people to shepherd. She's unparalleled in her passion for protecting the green sea turtle through education and outreach. And with that, Debbie, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. On behalf of the 200 volunteers at Malama Na Honu, I am honored to introduce our first presenter. In 2009, Kelly received her bachelor's degree in wildlife sciences from the State University of New York, College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Since 2013, she has worked tirelessly to help monitor and manage native water birds, seabirds, and green turtle populations, removing non-native invasive species and improving nesting habitats for these native species through native plant restoration. In March of 2020, Kelly found herself on the North Shore of Oahu as a James Campbell Wildlife Refuge Specialist, not only on Oahu, but also Maui. This change unexpectedly brought her back to turtles, and fortunately for us, Malama Na Honu. Kelly was a driving force behind our efforts to mitigate light pollution to prevent disorientation of hatchlings. She developed our educational brochures, which were later adopted by the U.S. Marine Corps base Kaneohe for their official reporting. On a personal note, Kelly has been a wonderful teacher to myself and our team of citizen scientists. She shares gems of knowledge each time we meet and took it upon herself to dig deep into our basking data. We at Malama Na Honu are very proud to introduce Kelly Goodale.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Debbie, for the introduction. Today I will be presenting on my internship with Malama Na Honu. To start off with, I would like to acknowledge how fortunate I feel to be able to work with Malama Na Honu. Working with sea turtles was my ultimate goal when I was an undergrad in the first few years as a field technician. My first internship and subsequent job was working with sea turtles at Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge and Cape Hatteras National Seashore, both located on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. However, the last 6 years, my career led me down a path of working primarily with seabirds, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. But I feel this opportunity has brought me back to my roots of why I wanted to get into conservation. This would not have been possible without Debbie and the countless volunteers with Malama Na Honu, Sheldon Plenovich with the Fish and Wildlife Services Coastal Program, and the green sea turtles that decided 2020 was their year to nest on Oahu. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to Pat Hart for assisting me with analyzing these data sets and Lisa Canale for her guidance through the internship program. The primary focus of my internship is to assist with nesting surveys and nest excavations, look at the trends in basking data that was collected during the 2019, 2020, and 2021 season, and how that relates to nesting activity. In addition, I work closely with Malama Na Honu and the Coastal Program on outreach material and standard operating procedures. For the outline of my presentation, I will give a brief background of Malama Na Honu and the history of the Hawaiian green turtle population, focusing on nesting and basking behavior. Next, we will look at the 2019 and 2021 basking data, examine trends in the data and what that means in relation to nesting and management. Then I will talk about my experience with assisting Malama Na Honu in the coastal program monitoring turtle nests during the 2020 and 2021 nesting season. From this experience, it sparked a need for education and outreach material, which I work closely with Malama Na Honu and the coastal program to develop. Malama Na Honu is a nonprofit organization created in 2007 and is the successor of NOAA's Marine Turtle Research Program Show Turtles Aloha campaign. which was created in 2005 to educate people on Oahu's basking green turtles. Malamana Honu continues to be supported by NOAA, as well as the Hawaii Tourism Authority, North Shore Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Coastal Program, and through private donations. Malamana Honu's mission statement is to protect Hawaiian sea turtles through education, public awareness, and conservation, all in the spirit of aloha. Initially, Malamana Honu focused primarily on providing protection and educational outreach that reduces sea turtle and human interactions and promotes respectful wildlife viewing of basking turtles at Laniakea Beach on Oahu's North Shore. Since 2007, Malamana Honu has grown to provide education to school groups, classrooms, and monitor Oahu's beaches for nesting activity. Outreach and education has become extremely important at this time because the green turtle population has dramatically increased. Prior to protection under the Endangered Species Act in 1978, green turtles were exploited by humans for centuries for food, and this includes take of adults as well as their eggs. They are also at risk from habitat degradation of foraging and nesting grounds, fisheries bycatch, vessel strikes, and entanglement and ingestion of marine debris, especially from shoreline fishing in our nearshore waters. From these exploitations, Hawaiian green turtles found refuge on low-lying atolls in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which are far from human population centers. The northwestern Hawaiian Islands have been protected since 1909. From Nihoa to Polaniku, these islands were originally designated by Theodore Roosevelt as the Hawaiian Islands Bird Reservation. Today, from Nihoa to Manawai is designated as the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge. Waihelani is designated as Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge and Battle of Midway National Memorial, and Holaniku is designated as a state seabird sanctuary managed by DLNR DOFA. All of these islands have an additional layer of protection as Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. Hawaiian green turtles were first listed in 1978 under the Endangered Species Act. Due to this protection, their population has increased dramatically. In general, it is difficult to estimate sea turtle populations because sea turtles spend most, if not all, of their time in the ocean. Typically, only one female comes to shore, which is only to lay eggs. To understand the population of sea turtles, monitoring nesting activity is the most commonly used index to see trends in populations. We are going to focus on Lalo, which is right there. And approximately 90% of nesting for Hawaiian green turtle subpopulation occurs in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands at Lalo. Within Lalo is East Island, which is right in the red there. And East Island is a mere 11 acres, which accounts for 55% of these nests. Over a 30-year period, from 1973 to 2003, nesting females on East Island at Lalo increased from 100 to 500 females. Based on this data, the population is estimated to increase approximately 5.7% annually. In a recent analysis of a 40-year review, from 1973 to 2013, these data indicated that a 4.8% increase in population, which is still really good. With this increase, green turtles are becoming more common in the main Hawaiian Islands. Today, they can regularly be seen basking on beaches. The Hawaii subpopulation of green turtles is truly unique, as males and females are known to come ashore to bask, which can be several hours at a time. This phenomenon is seen commonly in the Hawaiian archipelago and to a much lesser extent has been documented in Australia, Galapagos, and Mexico. Many of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which have been protected since 1909, support basking turtle populations, and this behavior has been seen regularly for decades. The purpose of basking is still speculated. One idea is similar to why freshwater turtles bask. They do so to absorb solar radiation. However, green turtles do not orient themselves to the sun and will bask on overcast, cooler days or even at night. So this is debatable. The second idea is based on their breeding behavior. Since the majority of Hawaiian green turtles nest at Lalo, this large congregation, which coincides with albatross fledging season, attracts tiger sharks. Therefore, basking offers them a safe place to rest during the breeding season. This behavior, which seemed exclusive to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, is now commonly seen on the main Hawaiian Islands. Basking behavior was not documented until 1995 in the main Hawaiian Islands and is likely due to the protections that were put in place in 1978. The popular beaches in which these turtles bask, such as Laniakea on Oahu and Ho'okipa on Maui, have volunteers who set up buffers and educate beachgoers on responsible wildlife viewing. This prevents beachgoers from getting too close and adding unnecessary stress to resting turtles. Looking at the bigger picture, we have a growing population of Hawaiian green turtles. So what does this mean for basking and nesting on the main Hawaiian Islands? Luckily, over the last several years, from the efforts of many dedicated Malama Nahonu volunteers, they have helped collect an incredible amount of data that can help provide an insight as to what we can expect to see in the future. While volunteers are educating visitors, ensuring the safety of turtles, they are also identifying individuals and report when they arrive and leave throughout the day. In partnership with NOAA, many of these turtles have been identified as males and females in age. I worked with Malama Nahonu on entering and cleaning up the data and eventually analyzing it as well. The data set I focused on is from January 2019 to October 2021. Throughout this time period, 20 individuals were documented. Since many of these turtles left after sunset, I analyzed the data during daylight hours only. There is also a gap in the data set in 2020 when beaches on Oahu were closed due to COVID-19, which means Malama Nahonu volunteers could not monitor turtle activities during these times. To account for this, all data analyzed is by mean basking time per month for each individual. From this data set, there are several things I want to look at. First, I wanted to know if mean basking time differed between sexes. Included in this category is unknown, which category is U, which represents unknown. These individuals are young turtles, and we have not been able to identify them as male or female yet. Therefore, they are in their own group. I did not want to completely discredit them in the analysis. So to analyze the data, I conducted a one-way ANOVA, which determined a significant difference between at least two groups. The Tukey's post hoc multiple comparison test showed there is a significant difference between mean basking time of males and unknown individuals, as well as females and unknown individuals. But there's not a statistically significant difference between females and males. And you can see that on the graph on the right. I also wanted to see how basking changed throughout the year. As you can see from this graph, March to May had an increased level in basking. And to note on this, data for November and December have not been entered, and December hasn't been collected yet. So it's just the, so that data is currently not in here. The differences we see, especially how mean basking changes throughout the year, is integral to management. If we revisit this graph, we consider nesting, which starts in April and early May. I also wanted to show how basking changed throughout the year. As you can see from this graph, March to May has an increased level of basking. And from these graphs, it is very clear that during non-nesting season, basking is more prevalent. So lastly, I wanted to see if mean basking time differed between the nesting and non-nesting season. After performing a 2-sample t-test, there was a significant difference in mean basking time between nesting season, where the mean was 29.22 minutes, and non-nesting season, where the mean was 35.77 minutes. Ultimately, this shows during non-nesting season, we can expect more baskers on the beach, whereas during nesting season, these turtles do not spend as much time on shore, and maybe in offshore waters, or as we know that some of them migrate to Lalo. So the next part of my internship focused on assisting with nest surveys and excavations. Nesting activity on Oahu has been monitored through Fish and Wildlife Service's coastal program in Malama Nahonu since 2016. Prior to this, data was collected intermittently. Over the last few years, as nesting has significantly increased, survey efforts have increased as well. In coordination with the coastal program, Malama Nahonu has enlisted an army of volunteers to walk beaches around Oahu. Like I previously mentioned, turtles start nesting at the end of April or early May. Typically, nesting surveys start in mid-April to ensure the first nest is observed. Many beaches start with 1 to 2 surveys a week. However, we've noticed a lot of activity, surveys are increased, and at some beaches, it occurs daily. Surveyors walk the beach to find turtle tracks as seen in the first and second picture. Typically, these tracks differ from tracks related to basking as they go well above high tide line and usually up into the vegetation with a large mound of sand left over from digging and burying their eggs. Efforts has increased dramatically over the last couple of years with more beaches being covered and surveys occurring more frequently. The laying season goes until October. Based on data from Lalo, a female will lay an average of 92 eggs and 3 to 5 nests a year. Nests typically hatch around day 66. So we start daily checks of nests from day 50 until it hatches or until day 70. During these daily checks, we look for signs of hatching. In addition, this year we also worked with NOAA on collecting additional data such as nest temperature with data loggers, as you can see in the far right photo, and tagging and sampling nesting female turtles. Once a nest hatches, we conduct an excavation. This gives us an inventory of how many eggs hatched, how many are unhatched, and at what stage of development. And we can also release any entrapped hatchlings. We conduct this 3 to 5 days after the initial emergence, so the nest can naturally hatch on its own. Collecting this data has been an incredible collaboration between Malama Nahonu, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Coastal Program and Refuges, and the Marine Corps Base of Hawaii. During the last 2 years, we have seen several potential threats to the nest, many of which can be managed for. They range from ATVs and mopeds, which can compact nests, making it difficult for hatchlings to emerge. They can also destroy native vegetation, which helps stabilizes dunes. Over time, this can ultimately contribute to erosion. In addition, coastal dunes are fragile ecosystems that are home to endangered plants, insects, and Hawaiian monk seals. They can also provide nesting habitat for seabirds. Light pollution, turtle hatchlings use the light from the stars and the moon to find the water. Naturally, the water reflects the light, and this should be the lightest part during the night. However, development has drastically changed our night skies. Therefore, it is common for hatchlings to walk away from the beach and towards the brighter lights from the houses, street lights, and commercial buildings. Sadly, we have noticed that these lights are not restricted to lights that are close by on the beach. They can be several miles away and can have detrimental effects on hatchlings. Depredation, non-native mammalian predators such as dogs, feral cats, mongoose, and rats can greatly affect the nesting success of a turtle nest. As you can imagine, it would be quite easy for a dog to get into a nest. A mongoose, on the other hand, was a little bit more surprising since nests are usually several centimeters below the surface. However, it is common for turtles to lay nests very close to where they have previously laid. I've seen some nests within inches of one another. When female turtles do this, they may unintentionally remove sand, protecting older nests, making it easier for predators such as mongoose to access the egg chamber. This photo on the left we came across and saw several eggs removed and strewn about the beach. We covered it back up and put a game camera on the area to see if we could identify the predator. And within hours, this mongoose was caught digging back into the egg chamber. Bonfires, when a turtle lays a nest, she leaves a pit behind, which unfortunately looks like a good place to make a fire. These high temperatures on top or near a turtle nest can essentially cook the eggs. During hatching season, hatchlings that emerge can be attracted to the light and head towards the fire as well. I think this is where education and outreach is extremely important because many people, whether from here or visiting, don't know the rules and regulations around beach fires, which they're illegal on all state beaches and recreational areas, and all fires must be in devices designated to contain fires. Marine debris is another issue for turtles attempting to lay nests, as well as hatchlings trying to emerge. One of the most common things we find in nests is fishing lines. And as you can see in this video, if Sheldon and Debbie didn't excavate this nest, this hatchling likely would not have made it. Overwash and erosion, We expect more frequent and intense storm surges due to climate change and sea level rise. For many of our beaches in Hawaii, they are getting narrower because of this. This restricts the beach availability for turtles to nest. If they are near the high tide line or it is a minimally sloped beach, it is expected that these nests will get inundated more frequently, which could lower hatching success. Currently, we are wrapping up the data collection for the 2021 season. We hope that by analyzing the data, we can better understand what affects nesting success and where and how we can focus management actions. This can be in the form of blocking out lights in areas that light pollution is a known risk, predator control where depredation is likely, and outreach and education on heavily visited beaches. One of the tools we have adapted in the last couple of years is using Art Collector to collect the data. From this data we collect, we can see on a spatial scale where our turtle hotspots are. As you can see, the entire north shore of Oahu has a lot of turtle activity from nesting and basking and false crawls. This can help focus management actions to protect and help recover this threatened population, as we know we have a growing turtle population and expect there to be more human and turtle interactions. As with most conservation efforts we work on, climate change is a factor we must take into account. I previously mentioned we expect more frequent and intense storms due to climate change and sea level rise. We can expect overwash of these nests and erosion on our islands. Earlier I mentioned 90% of green turtles occurs within Lalo. However, these low-lying islands are extremely susceptible to climate change. This has already started to become a reality. In October 2018, Hurricane Waialaka decimated East Island within Lalo. East Island was a mere 80 meters long that was reduced to 46 meters. This one island accounts for 55% of the nests within Lalo. As you can see in the last image from March 2020, the island is slowly recovering. Also notice though that compared to May 2018, there is no vegetation. And from this, you can't tell, but the island is definitely doesn't have as much height as it once did. However, if we expect more frequent and severe storms as well as sea level rise, it is only a matter of time for many of these low-lying islands in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands to disappear. As you can imagine, the big question is, where will these turtles go? It is possible that some of these turtles are already finding refuge on the main Hawaiian Islands, which could explain this dramatic increase in nesting. We are working closely with NOAA, who is acquiring genetic data from these nests to see if they are in fact turtles from Lalo. We have collected genetic data from turtles laying eggs as well as from unhatched eggs. This brings us to the importance of protecting potential basking and nesting grounds on higher islands. To do this, outreach and education is critical. By looking at the trends in basking and nesting, conservation agencies can focus effort on protecting these beaches, educating the general public, and minimizing threats such as light pollution and depredation. This is also a great way to engage the public in conservation efforts in Hawaii. The most important thing that comes out of this is connecting people with place. This can expand to other conservation issues that not only affect turtles, but also the islands themselves. We all know marine debris is an issue and it directly affects sea turtles that could be nesting like the video we saw earlier. Entanglement in the ocean or on land and ingestion of marine debris. Beach cleanups, reducing use of plastic products, and proper disposal of garbage will directly benefit turtles. These actions also benefit native species and bring awareness to several conservation topics that people can connect with. For example, protecting nesting beaches also protects native species, some of which are threatened and endangered, like the yellow-faced bee and ojai. Lastly, providing the educational material to the public is extremely important. I have worked with Malamana Honu on developing stickers and pamphlets, which are shared with the public while on the beach doing nesting surveys, people who visit basking turtles at Laniakea, and at other outreach events. With artwork done by Sheldon Plentovich, these items share information on when nesting season occurs, proper etiquette for encountering nesting turtles or hatchlings, and how everyone can decrease disturbance to the species. Throughout working with Malamana Honu in the coastal program, I have been able to see a different side of managing for turtle conservation. Over the last several years, my experience was restricted to areas with limited visitation. However, we know animals do not see these boundaries and people are a very important part of the equation. With an increasing Hawaiian green turtle population on Oahu that may be further increased due to the effects of climate change, we can expect human and turtle interactions to increase. Outreach and education is an important tool to aid in decreasing negative impacts to turtles. The most important takeaway message is what we can all do. Remove all of our recreational equipment off the beach in the evening, chairs and pop-up tents, disposing of garbage properly, especially fishing lines. The photo on the right, as you can see, is an initiative that Hawaii Marine Animal Response started in 2020 in partnership with NOAA, which is to provide fishing line receptacles at various boat ramps and beach parks throughout Oahu. In addition, turning off outside lights or having turtle-friendly lights and closing blinds or curtains. Finally, only having bonfires that are in contained receptacles. From federal to state to nonprofit to individuals, it takes everyone to protect Hawaii's native species, and being able to collaborate with different partners has been an incredible experience I have been a part of. With that, I have a slide for the work I cited throughout the presentation. And I would like to thank you all for attending my talk. If you would like to learn more about Mālama Nahonu, I've provided their website in the upper left-hand corner, and my contact info is on the bottom left. And with that, I think we have time for questions.